We're going to give everyone a few minutes to get into the Zoom room, and then we'll get started. Okay. Good afternoon, and welcome to our next webinar in our property owner webinar series. Today, we're going to discuss the Notice of Appraised Value that is out in the mail now. You should have probably received yours at this point, but we'll go through the notice and talk about some of the key points of it. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, there's a Q&A feature. You can use that. We have people monitoring the questions, and then anything that we haven't covered, we'll answer those questions at the end. Okay, so notices of appraised value. Appraisal districts are required to send these annually, and this sets the market value of your property. And then we send those market values to the taxpayers, the property owners, as well as the taxing units for Travis County. And the purpose of appraising property at market value is to ensure that each property owner pays their fair share of the tax burden in proportion to the value of their property. And we try to explain this like a pie. So the whole pie is how much taxes will be collected by a taxing unit from all property owners. So everyone who pays into City of Austin, that pie would be the total taxes collected. And then your slice of the pie is based on how much your property is worth, so that somebody that owns a $200,000 home isn't paying the same amount of tax as somebody who has $1 million home. And again, the report of the market value determination is known as the Notice of Appraised Value, and these are provided to taxpayers in April of each year. Changes in your property value and your market value do not directly affect your tax bill. It doesn't necessarily mean that there'll be an increase or decrease in the total taxes paid. That is determined by a taxing unit's budget. So our taxing units, which are our cities, our county, school districts, water districts, they set a budget to provide services for all the property owners and then set a tax rate to then fund that budget. So just because your market value goes up or down doesn't necessarily mean your taxes are going to change. Again, that's affected by the taxing unit's tax rate. We do have a website. It's travistaxes.com, and you can see the breakdown of your property, all of the taxing entities that you pay your property taxes to. We update this every year beginning in August, and the taxing entities will put their proposed tax rates on that website, so you can see for your specific property how those tax rates are going to affect your tax bill. You can also leave feedback for the taxing entities if there's if you think the tax rate's too high or there's a service that you think they should be offering. So again, that's travistaxes.com. So like I stated, notices of appraised value are in the mail. If you haven't received your notice yet, give it a few weeks. There's 500,000 properties in Travis County, so it does take a couple weeks to get those all mailed. If you still haven't gotten your notice, we do upload those, a PDF version, onto our website, Property Search. So traviscad.org has a copy of the Notice of Appraised Value as well as 2024 property value information. And the first page of the Notice of Appraised Value gives you some information on your property. And you'll need this information if you are going to protest your property. So in the top right-hand corner, there's a property ID that's specific to your property. And for owners, there's an e-file PIN, and you'll need that PIN to associate your property to your account. Those are both on the first page of the Notice of Appraised Value. And there's three main terms when we talk about appraised value terms. So the first is the market value, and this is what your property would sell for as of January 1st of each year. And this is the value that the appraisal district is statutorily mandated to set each year. The second is the net appraised value, and we'll discuss this further in a few slides, but the net appraised value is what we call a limited value. And it's just a calculation for those properties that have a homestead limitation or a circuit breaker limitation, where it limits the amount of increase that you could experience year over year. And then the taxable value, that third term, is the value after all of your exemptions are applied. And this is the value that's actually used to calculate how much you'll pay in taxes each year. So on your notice of appraised value, the first page, we do provide the key information. So the market value of your property and the net appraised value of your property are on the first page, as well as all of your taxing entities that you pay taxes to, any exemptions that you or your property have qualified for, the exemption amount for each of those exemptions per taxing unit, and then the current and prior year taxable value. If you have an over 65 or disabled persons exemption, we'll also list your freeze or ceiling for your school taxes or any entities that have elected a tax ceiling. So again, that first term is market value, and that's on the left-hand corner of the grid on the first page of the notice of appraised value. And again, this is just what your property would sell for as of January 1st. So let's talk a little more about market value. So again, this is the value that our office, the appraisal district, sets each year, and we appraise as of January 1st of each year. There's no limit on market values increasing or decreasing. It's just that market value just reflects what is indicated in the current real estate market. The second term, the net appraised value, is the limitation value. And again, this is just a calculation. It is shown on the notice of appraised value in that top grid on the first page. And you should always look to see the difference in your market and net appraised. And again, that net appraised could be lower if you have a homestead exemption or a circuit breaker limitation that limits the amount of increase you'll experience each year. So for example, in this property, the market value, or what it would sell for as of January 1, was $650,769. But their net appraised is only $454,543. So they've had a limited value that they'll pay taxes on because they'll see a 10% increase max each year. So in years like we've had in the past, where we've had a very robust increasing market, those people who had a homestead exemption only experienced 10% of that increase each year. So it's a big benefit having that homestead exemption. Again, this is the limited value. Homestead exemptions are capped at 10% per year. And then the new circuit breaker limitation caps properties at 20% per year. So the circuit breaker limitation was implemented in this past legislative session as part of the Property Tax Relief Act. And it limits all real property that is not a homestead to 20% per year. It is a pilot program right now, so it's for tax years 24, 25, and 2026. We'll have to see if the legislature decides to expand that in coming sessions. But for right now, if it's a real property account, so anything that's a mineral, commercial property, residential property that doesn't have a homestead exemption, we'll get that 20% limitation. And as a reminder, that first full calendar year that you qualify for your limitation, that sets your base value. And then after that first full year, you'll only see that 10 or 20% increase per year maximum. Again, this is a state mandated calculation. So it's just last year's net appraised value plus 20% or 10% or 20%, depending on your homestead or circuit breaker, or the current market value, whichever is lower. And then that third term is the taxable value. And again, this is the value that you are actually paying taxes on. And it's the net appraised value less any exemptions that you qualify for. So on your notice of appraised value, the first page, that second grid shows all of your taxing entities, what exemptions you qualify for, and the amount of those exemptions. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the 2024 taxable value. And that is your net appraised for the minus any exemptions that you qualify for. And that's the amount, again, that you'll pay taxes on. And each taxable value for each taxing entity could be different. Your city may offer different exemption amounts than your water district. So you'll have to look at that taxable value for each taxing entity to calculate any tax that might be due in the following year. So these will be for values setting. These values are set for tax bills that will be mailed in October or November of 2024. And we mentioned a minute ago about a tax ceiling. And a tax ceiling is for anyone who has an over 65 or disabled person's exemption. And it limits your school district taxes to the amount that you paid in the year that you qualified for that exemption. For school districts, this is state mandated. They have to freeze that school tax in the year you turn 65 or disabled. There are some other taxing entities that elect to offer this tax ceiling. We currently have, I think, 3 taxing entities that offer a tax ceiling. So you'll see that on your notice of appraised value on that first page in the far right-hand side if you have an over 65 or disabled person's exemption. On the second page of the notice of appraised value, you have your property value breakdown. And this grid will show you what the market value of your improvements or the buildings and structures is. It'll also show you the market value of the land. It gives you current year and prior year information, so you can see the comparison between the two. It'll also let you see if you have any special valuation, ag valuation on your property. And then it'll provide you what your limitation is for your homestead or the circuit breaker if you apply for either of those. And then the net appraised value and any exemptions that you have. The truth in taxation information is also provided on the second page of the notice. It explains the required language for the new circuit breaker limitation in that first paragraph. And then it has some other statutorily mandated language about the legislature not setting tax rates. Those are set by your local taxing entities. And then a statement about budget and tax rates and how the rate setting process works. So it has a statement about the no new revenue tax rate and the voter approval rate. And we have more information on those rates if you're interested in that information on the travistaxes.com website. And again, that is updated beginning in August of each year. On the next page of the notice, you have your protest instructions. So if you believe that the market value of your property is incorrect, you have the right to file a protest. We list on this third page how you do that. The easiest way to file a protest is online. You'll need your property ID and your owner PIN, but you can also submit it through mailing it to our address, which is listed there. You can drop it off in person. It provides some information about informal meetings and when those will start, when formal hearings with the Appraisal Review Board will start, and where those will be located at. At the top of that purple box, it gives you what your protest deadline is. So generally, the protest deadline is May 15th or 30 days after your notice is mailed. So make sure you get any protests submitted prior to that deadline date. And then the next page has a description of all the exemptions that are available. The deadline to file for exemptions is April 30th. So if you think you might qualify for any of those exemptions and you don't see them on that notice of appraised value, reach out to our customer service group. They can assist you with that. We also include a notice of protest form with the notice of appraised value. And again, that deadline to file your protest is May 15th or 30 days after your notice is mailed. The Property Tax Assistance Division of the Comptroller's Office also has a taxpayer assistance pamphlet that we include with the notice of appraised value that walks you through what your rights are as a taxpayer, how you protest, All of that and more information can be found on our website at traviscad.org/protest. We have some really good information on the process and how you go about doing it. So if you need more assistance, again, our website, traviscad.org/protest. And this year we also included a handout for just a simplified version of the protest process. So it walks you through the 3 steps. The first being to file your protest. And again, the deadline's May 15th or 30 days after your notice is mailed. The second step in this process is to have an informal meeting, and it's optional, but you can meet informally with our appraiser and discuss your property. If there's things that you feel are specific to your property that we need to know, that informal meeting's the best time to do that. And then if you get through that informal meeting and we still don't reach an agreement on the value, you can attend your ARB hearing. Those are starting in June of this year, and those can be attended either virtually or in person. And we strongly encourage property owners to file online through our online portal. You get some extra benefits if you use this process. There is immediate confirmation of filing, so you're not wondering if your protest got lost in the mail or when you dropped it in the Dropbox, did we get it timely? You can also easily upload and review evidence. So if you have documents you think we need to see before that informal meeting, you can upload them to your portal account. You can also see the evidence that we used in setting your market value of your property. So you can download that from the online portal. Any offers through that informal process will be submitted through the portal, and you can review them, accept or reject through the portal. And then you can also schedule yourself for a time for that informal meeting. You do have to schedule yourself through the online portal. That's the only way to self-schedule. You can also join your informal from your online portal, check in, meet through the online phone call to have the informal with the appraiser. So again, there's a lot of benefits for e-filing. We encourage property owners to do that. We try to make it very easy and efficient. So that can be found on our website, traviscad.org. And then informal meetings they started yesterday, April 16th. One of the benefits we added this year was this self-scheduling aspect through the online portal. So you can pick a time that's convenient for you to schedule that informal meeting. If that's not a good option for you, we also have the option to get in line for that day's queue. We do warn you that wait times can be pretty long if you're not doing a scheduled appointment. So get in line online on our website has some more information on that and how you get in line and check in for your property informal meeting. We do only do 1 meeting per property just because of the volume that we have. And before you can schedule that informal meeting, you do need to have your protest filed and processed in our system. So it needs to be showing in your portal account. And then on May 1st, we're going to have a whole webinar discussing the protest process. That'll be on Wednesday, May 1st at 11:30. And you can register now for that webinar, traviscad.org/webinars. And then we will see if we have any questions. My market value is equal to my net appraised value, even though I've applied for the homestead exemption. Why is that? And thank you. So it depends on when you got that homestead exemption. If you have property specific information, you can call into our customer service department and they can help you with your property specifically. But generally, if it's the first year you have a homestead exemption, your base value is being set. So you won't see any limitation that first full year. If it's the second or third year, a subsequent year that you've had that homestead exemption, then the market value and the net appraised could be equal because the market value is your net appraised. So you're not seeing those huge increases that you do year over year. So your market value is the lower of the two. So market value dropped by an amount from last year, but the appraised value increased. How is that? So again, we get this question a lot, especially over the past few years where we've seen huge increases in market values year over year. So if you had a homestead exemption in those years, you only saw a 10% increase each year. So you're still catching up because you had that limited value in those years where we had huge increases. So your market value could have actually dropped this year, but because you experienced those 10% increases each year, you're still catching up to that market value. The three entities that offer over 65 freezes are City of Austin, City of Leander, I'm sorry, Austin Community College District, City of Cedar Park, and City of Leander, I believe, but those are listed on our website. If you go to traviscad.org, we have a list of all of the exemptions that each entity adopts. What is the homestead value limitation and why did it go down from 2023 to 2024? So again, that homestead value limitation is that limited value. So in prior years, you experienced only the 10% increase because you had a homestead exemption. So you may have not experienced the full 10% this year because your market value came down. So that limitation amount will decrease. Hope that makes sense. Can you clarify the tax ceiling? So tax ceilings are state mandated for school districts. And if you have an over 65 or disabled person's exemption, your school taxes are frozen in the year that you turn 65 or disabled. So you'll never pay more than that amount in that year that you qualified. There are other entities that can adopt and elect to do a tax ceiling, but the school districts, it's state mandated. We had a question about the market value being more than I paid for the house. So if that's the case, you can file a protest, provide us with the settlement statement from your purchase, and we can work that through the informal process. Do you need to apply for a homestead exemption every year? No, you do not. So once the homestead exemption is granted, you don't need to reapply unless we send you a letter asking you to reapply. There is a new law that passed this legislative session, that requires us to audit homestead exemptions every 5 years. So once every 5 years, at least, you'll get a letter from us asking you to reapply just to confirm that you still qualify for that exemption. Please explain the circuit breaker limitation. I have 0 on mine. So the circuit breaker limitation is the new law that was passed this year, part of Senate Bill 2 or the Property Tax Relief Act. And for properties that aren't homestead properties, they'll limit the value to 20%. So it operates very similar to a homestead exemption, but instead of the 10% limitation in value, you get a 20% limitation in value. So it's all real property, which would be commercial properties, rental properties, residentials, anything that's not a homestead or personal property. I need to protest my taxes last year. I was told to fill out a form to ensure I get my forms. So there's a question about the authorized agent on the account. That's really specific to your own property and which company submitted forms. So call us at our customer service line. It's 512-834-9317. And they can pull up your property and answer those questions for you. So there's a question about protesting if you purchase a property after January 1st, but the seller is still the registered owner. So the buyer and seller can both protest. So you can still protest the property. You would just need to get your owner ID and PIN, and you can call our customer service department and we can help you get that or get that information from the seller. Why would the homestead value limitation decrease 80% year over year if there have been no changes? So again, that's that catching up. So your limitation last year may have been $100,000 because you were still catching up to the market value. But this year, you're closer to the market value. That 10% increase puts you a little bit closer to the market. And so your limitation amount will be less. We have a question about market value and how that amount compares to what a realtor offers to buy your property at. So the market value is what the property would sell for in the open market, between a willing buyer and seller. So it should be the same. The market value is what your property would sell for. There's a question about benefits to using a tax reduction service provider or a tax agent instead of protesting yourself. And it's really a personal decision. We do try to make the online process for protesting yourself very simple and efficient. So it is definitely something you can do on your own. But if you make the choice in your personal situation to hire a tax agent, that's your choice too. It's really dependent on what you feel is the best value. Is it true you have to file homesteads every 5 years? Somewhat. You don't have to file for your homestead every 5 years. Once you're granted the exemption's on your account. However, the appraisal district now, based because of a new law that was passed, has to audit homestead records every 5 years. So we will ask you to reapply once every 5 years, and you go through that same process. And as long as you still qualify for that exemption, the exemption stays on your account. Okay, those are all the questions we have for today. Thank you for joining us. We do ask that you give us some feedback on today's event at traviscad.org/event feedback. There's also a QR code you can scan, but let us know how we did and what we can offer in the future. Thank you.